Alaska is brought to you by Coca-Cola, providing Alaskans with quality soft drinks since 1937.
By Cook Inlet Region Incorporated, an Alaska Native corporation promoting economic and social progress for people throughout the state.
By the generous support of the Alaska Native Health Board.
Welcome to Heartbeat Alaska. I'm Jeanie Green, bringing you Native news across the north. Today we visit the community of St. Paul in the Pribilofs. Ann Walker is with us once again with the Alaska Native Health Board interview. We have news briefs from around the state and the lower 48. All that and more, but first here's Gary Fife with National Native News.
This is National Native News. I'm Gary Fife. This past week, imprisoned Native activist Leonard Peltier lost another legal round in federal court. A federal appeals court in St. Louis, Missouri rejected Peltier's request for a new trial in connection with the deaths of two FBI agents in 1975. The decision ends Peltier's third round of appeals. He was convicted in 1977 for murder in the shootings of the two agents and sentenced to 2 life terms in federal prison. For nearly 20 years, Peltier and supporters have claimed the government did not give the Ojibwe Lakota man a fair trial, and he should get another chance in court. Federal prosecutor Lynn Crook says he hopes the ruling will put the case to rest. Peltier's plight was the subject of a Robert Redford film called Incident at Oglala and has been taken up by Amnesty International. Jeanie will have more on that case later in the show. New legislation would force the Washington Redskins football team to drop their use of a Native American nickname if they want to build a new stadium on federal land in Washington, D.C. Colorado U.S. Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell, a Northern Cheyenne, has added language to a bill that would place restrictions on the use of federal land in Washington for a sports arena sought by the Washington football team. Campbell's amendment to the District of Columbia Stadium Act would require users of such facilities to refrain from derogatory or offensive ethnic or racial stereotypes. He says the name Redskins is offensive to some Native Americans. His amendments would hold up construction of a new sports stadium until the owners of the Washington, D.C. football team change the name. An Alaska Native corporation on Kodiak Island has clashed with state and federal officials over land usage plans, and the Native group has ordered them out. The Kodiak Corporation is seeking to build an airstrip and hunting and fishing lodge on their lands near the Karluk River. Some state wildlife officials have publicly opposed the plan by signing petitions against the development. That move has been drawing fire from the Native corporation, and state agencies have disavowed their employees' actions. The closure of the Native lands will shut down 2 current salmon studies and puts off a planned 3rd study. Kodiak leader says the corporation has the right to do what it wants to with the land. The Crow Tribe of Montana has launched a campaign against drug abuse among its tribal members. Indian Country Today reports that the Tribal Housing Authority and community members have formed the Crow Tribal Housing Authority Drug Elimination Program. Program coordinator Ada Benz says drug-related crime was on the rise, so they used a grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to run the plan. To date, they've added musical concerts and workshops and have put in street lights and security guards to tribal housing projects. Benz says the community feedback they've heard so far is positive, and it tells them the program is welcome because it's aimed at youth. And finally, the 100-year-old remains of 4 Greenland Eskimos will be sent home from the American Museum of Natural History in New York. The Washington Post reported the remains are of Inuits taken from their Arctic home by famous explorer Robert Peary. They were housed in the museum where they were put on public display, and 4 of the 6 died very quickly. Their bodies were stripped of flesh and examined by scientists. One skeleton received a fake burial and was put on display, where it was later discovered by the man's own son. A book by Ken Harper, which told their story, gained publicity and started the move to rebury the natives. The four will be returned to Earth on the 1st of August with a small brass plaque that reads, "They have come home." This is National Native News, and for Heartbeat Alaska, I'm Gary Fife.
Thanks, Gary. We'll return with more news from around the state right after these messages.
My name is John. I do watch Heartbeat Alaska, and you should too.
Vince, this crash dummy Hall of Fame's impressive.
Yeah, look.
Ben hurt.
He tried to get safety belts in chariots.
Ah.
Alexander Graham Belt.
Watson, buckle up. Watson, buckle up.
Look, it's the Mona Lisa.
Not much to smile about if people aren't buckling up.
Vince, by telling people safety belts save lives, do you think we'll end up here?
Let's hope so.
Ludwig von Brake's broken.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
We have always felt in harmony with the land.
Chakome, tapiwa, ta skumok, ta tapiachu, kenok anesche, matapiwa, makaspumos, akum.
Help the Soil Conservation Service help our Earth. Call us today. We owe it to our children.
If you have news or information from your village or community, please call Heartbeat Alaska, area code 907-563-3507, or fax 907-563-7079.
Last week we promised you video of 4th of July's from around the state, and because of viewers like you, we've got it. Thank you very much. Father George Poletnikoff from St. Paul. Travel with us now as he shares his video from St. Paul in the middle of the Bering Sea and the Pribilof Islands.
The people are beginning to gather into the city square, preparing for the festivities.
The Aleut village of St. Paul is located on St. Paul Island, the largest of the Pribilof Islands. The Pribilof Islands are actually tips of a sub-oceanic mountain range. St. Paul Island is located in the Bering Sea. It's 14 miles long, 8 miles wide, with 45 miles of shoreline. In 1741, the Russians made contact with the Aleuts. Prior to that contact, the Aleuts were a rich, intact society that had been in the Aleutian Islands for several thousands of years. With the Russian contact, no area of Aleut life and culture was left unaltered by Russian influence, at least to a slight degree. Before Russian contact, the Pribilof Islands were known to the Aleuts. They were occasionally visited, but not permanently occupied. Russian expansion moved from west to east. Kindliness and killing went hand in hand. The Aleuts were locked into a tough position because of their dependence upon the sea and especially on the coastline. They had no place to go other than between islands. When their food supplies were destroyed or taken, and the able-bodied hunters killed, starvation followed for many of the population. Unlike the Nez Perce Indians, who could retreat into Canada, or the Modoc Indians, who took refuge in the lava beds, or Tlingit Indians, who could retreat into the forests, the Aleuts had no refuge. After 1786, some Aleuts were relocated by the Russians onto the Pribilofs. There's no doubt that the Aleut culture has been challenged by massacres, diseases, tidal waves, foreign invasion, and captivity. Still, they remain one of the most resourceful people on the planet. Their technological genius is evidenced by their kayak or bidarka. There were many kinds of kayaks. More variety were used by the Aleuts than by any other people who used kayaks. They were built to traverse the waves as well as resisting the extreme pounding and running through heavy surf and breakers. If caught in a storm while hunting, several hunters would lash their bidarkas together, thus forming a multi-hulled craft with sufficient flexibility to ride out any storm that would sink a single boat. Last week, many of St. Paul's 700 residents celebrated 4th of July, Independence Day. In the past, a variety of games and exercises reinforced training for kayak hunting. On this day, however, the games are like everywhere else, just for fun.
Are you ready? Good, set, go!
The village of St. Paul is geographically isolated from the rest of the world. Yet Aleuts are proud to be Aleuts, and they often return home from great distances after long absences to resume residence. They're gaining control over their land and their resources, and with their demonstrated skill and human adaptability, they may survive another 9,000 years.
Keep going! Keep going! Come on, come on! There you go! Give her a hand! We got it!
Once again, thank you, Father George Pletnikoff from St. Paul in the Pribilof Islands. From time to time, I hear from viewers that say, Jeanie, I've got video, but I just don't think it's good enough. Well, let's work together. You get me the video, and I'll edit it. Today, we're going to take a look at another 4th of July, this time from videographer Tom Burdenground. Where was he? In Seward.
Yay, Ruthie! Green Stanley of Seward, Alaska. Good run, Green.
More commonly known as Ruthie, is an Inupiaq Eskimo that lives in Seward with her family. This year, she was one of more than 200 other women runners competing in the annual Mount Marathon race.
Back it up, please. Back it up, please. Behind the white line.
Mount Marathon rises 3,022 feet above sea level. The race attracts hundreds of runners every year. It's said to have been started in the early 1900s over a barroom bet. Today, the race attracts thousands of people from all over the world to watch the 3 divisions of the race: men's, women's, and juniors. Running up a mountain is tough enough, but this year's race was particularly grueling. Steve Buchanan, hometown hero, won it though. He beat the mud and 262 other runners. Another hometown runner, Patty Foldager, won the women's race. An exciting race for this year in Seward, where their runners dominated the top 10 places. Seward is a hospitable city, and the crowds were generous with their support for anyone who completed the race. Though the race attracts a wide field of competitors, it still holds special meanings for hometown runners. Ruthie Stanley was disappointed with her showing this year. She began training on May 4th, 2 months before the race. Running up any mountain, especially Mount Marathon, takes stamina and strength. That's why we cheer as loud as we do. That's why we stay until the last runner finishes. And that's why Ruthie Stanley is a contender. This is only her 4th year that she and her husband Brian have run up the mountain. She doesn't claim to be a professional athlete. She only wants to win. And what about next year? She started training yesterday. For the benefit of our Canadian viewers, Seward, Alaska is 120 miles southwest of Anchorage, our largest cities. Make sure you're here next year for the 4th of July there. It's really something. We'll be back with more news from Heartbeat, Alaska, Native news across the north, right after these messages.
Without a home fire escape plan, a family member may try to re-enter a burning house in hopes of saving another victim. Never re-enter a burning house. Plan first, for the sake of your family.
This message was brought to you by the Yukon-Kuskokwim Health Corporation.
One, do you know the difference between HIV and AIDS? Two, how safe? The virus does not discriminate.
Earlier in the program, Gary Fife reported that American Indian activist Lennon Peltier lost another legal round in federal courts. The 1970s uprising still affects those that were there to this day. In an earlier interview, I spoke with Dennis Banks, who was at the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. The incident still affects his life, as we see in this report.
I had to run, physically run, 13 miles from bullets and dogs, and I outrun them over a period of 13 miles.
This was in 1968?
This was in 1973.
What incident?
This was at Wounded Knee. This was the big confrontation that the American Indian movement got involved in with the federal government.
Is this where you were ultimately arrested and incarcerated?
I was arrested because of our leadership. Russell Means and I went to trial on the because of the actions at Wounded Knee, and the government charged us with 16 crimes, 16 indictments, and we were on trial for 9 months, a 9-month trial. The incident itself was only 71 days. It was a little over 3 months, but the trial was 9 months. Because the government was so vindictive, and they wanted to try us for everything that they could lay before the grand jury system in South Dakota, which is racist to begin with. But they went along with it, and they issued indictments against us. The military was there at Wounded Knee, and a lot of the charges were dismissed against us because the federal judge felt that as long as the military was there, they were in violation. So anything that happened as a result of them being there couldn't be used against us in a criminal or civil court. And the judge was mad because the military was used at Wounded Knee against us. And he said as long as he was a federal judge, the military would never enforce the civilian rules and laws of this country unless there was some presidential proclamation. The troops should not have been at Wounded Knee, but they were there. And because of that, a lot of the charges were dismissed against us. And then the jury found us not guilty on the remaining charges. Those were federal charges. Then we had to go back and do the state charges. State wanted to, when the state realized that the feds weren't going to send us away, then they charged us.
Dennis Banks is still an Indian activist, only his cause is a little different these days. He travels the world promoting the Sacred Run, an international marathon that promotes peace among humanity. We turn now to the Alaska Native Health Board interview. The subject this week, smoking cessation.
Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths among Alaska Natives, and smoking cigarettes is directly linked to causing cancer. Today we have Bill Bowens, the tobacco education specialist at Alaska Native Medical Center, and Alla Gibnick, who participated in the tobacco cessation program at the hospital. If you smoke and are looking for alternative ways to quit, this may be for you. Al, I understand that you've been successful in this program. What does it mean to be successful?
Well, it's kind of unique in a way that I've been trying to quit for about a year, and I'm trying to find a way to do it. And I found that using a patch is really kind of simple, but it's really beneficial to you if you really want to quit.
Bill, Al mentioned the patch. What is this patch and how does it work?
The patches, there are 4 different brands. The product we use at the ANMC is Nicoderm. The patch has to be prescribed by your medical doctor, so that involves getting that, and then coming down to the patient education office on the main floor and enrolling in our program. The classes usually start within a week after you've enrolled.
And what does this patch look like? I've seen them in magazines. But
The patch is kind of like a Band-Aid. It comes in sealed containers, and I'll demonstrate now how to apply these. It's fairly simple. Just tear this off. And find a non-hairy place on your body. And it just simply applies.
So Al, when you use the patch, did you put it in the same place every day, or how many did you use?
No, they told me that if I put it same place all the way, it would get red, and I would kind of start from the left side, go to the middle, and go toward the middle, and right to the right side and the other side. And then when I got done with that, I would start the same thing over again.
And you would apply these patches every day?
You change patches each day, yes, and they go on for anywhere from 6 weeks to 10 weeks. The doctor will prescribe patches based on the amount you smoke and your own physical characteristics. The patches are also prescribed in conjunction with the behavior change classes.
How long did it take you to actually start with the patches and then you were successful?
They gave me a 30-day program, you know, like I had a 14, they have a different size, 14, 7, or 21. I had a 14, but I only used it for 23 days, and after that I just went kind of, you know.
What are some of the barriers that you feel? Do you get the same cravings that you have when you just go cold turkey?
Well, there's a lot of things that you have to really remind yourself that you just don't smoke your cigarette every time you quit eating, or, you know, different kind of habits that you have to, you know, really work on.
And for the viewing audience in rural areas, do they have access to the patch, or are there other alternative ways that they can use to successfully quit smoking?
Each corporation has its own program out there, and it would be best probably to check with your health educator. Most people successfully quit cold turkey. Over 50% of the people that quit smoking have done so just flat quit. I would encourage in your local village to get together with some elders that have quit and just form your own support group with your health aide and get the doctor involved if he's available. Just start having meetings, and maybe call me in Anchorage if you want some support group or some literature.
At the hospital at ANMC?
Yes.
All right, great. Today we've been talking with Alla Gibnick and Bill Bowens, who participated and taught in the tobacco cessation program at Alaska Native Medical Center. For Heartbeat Alaska and Alaska Native Health Board, I'm Ann Walker.
If you want to stop smoking, call the Alaska Native Medical Center. That's 279-6661, and they'll direct you in the right place. We have a special music video for you now. Lincoln Tritt is a talented, creative musician. He's from Arctic Village. Let's watch this.
Ago, when I was a boy, my mom used to push me out to church on Sunday, where my daddy was the priest, and he talked about taught me how to believe. I believe in the Father. I believe in the Son. And I believe in the Holy Ghost. I believe in love. I believe in trust. And I believe this is what my daddy meant. It's been many years since then. I've stumbled through life, never knowing what I meant. I guess that's why life is so rough for people like me at times. 'Cause I forgot to believe. I believe in the Father. I believe in the Son. And I believe in the Holy Ghost. I believe in love. I believe in trust. And I believe this is what my daddy meant.
Thank you, Lincoln Tritt from Arctic Village, for sending me that beautiful music video. If you've got music you'd like to share with the rest in the North, just give me a call and we'll get it on the air. Also, if you're going out into the water, please remember to wear your life preserver. Thank you. For Heartbeat Alaska, I'm Jeanie Green, bringing you Native news across the North. Join me again next week, won't you? See you then.
Years ago, when I was a boy, my mom